Hello, and welcome back to Now Read This with Shazam Watkins, aka Levi Aaron, aka I don't even know. Anyway, today we are going to be reviewing a book by JRR Tolkien that was recently released called The Children of Hurin, and the proper title is Narn I Hurin, The Tale of the Children of Hurin. So, I don't know how many of you are Tolkien nerds, but I am a gigantic Tolkien nerd. And my favorite book that Tolkien ever wrote, which many would probably disagree with, most people probably think The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. I love The Hobbit, as you well know, as one of my previous reviews stated. But my favorite book that Tolkien has ever written, which was released posthumously, was this one, and it is called The Silmarillion. The Silmarillion is the history of Middle-earth from the beginning until, the end about of the Second Age, I believe. It's been a little bit since I've read it. Actually, I usually read it about once a year. So, I guess I'll just read you a second, because it'll help explain something about the book that I'm about to review. So this is Ainulindala, the music of the Ainur. There was Eru, the one who in Arda is called Ilúvatar, and he made first the Ainur, the holy ones, that were the offspring of his thought, and they were with him before aught else was made. And he spoke to them, propounding to them themes of music, and they sang before him, and he was glad. And for a long while they sang only each alone, or but few together, while the rest hearkened. For each comprehended only that part of the mind of Ilúvatar from which he came, and in the understanding of their brethren they grew but slowly. Yet ever as they listened, they came to deeper understanding and increased in unison and harmony. So Ilúvatar, that's the first page of the Silmarillion. In the Silmarillion, what that's talking about is Ilúvatar is the creator god of the Tolkien universe, and he creates the Ainur, the holy ones, which are basically his helping angels. They're, I believe, called the Valar by the elves, and they end up going into Arda, which is Middle-earth, and preparing the dwelling place of the children of Ilúvatar, being the elves and the men, and later, though not on purpose, the dwarves, which is a very interesting story as well, if you're interested in this at all. Most people probably are not. I've heard that this is called just a history book, and it's totally boring and dull, but in my opinion, it's one of the greatest things he ever wrote, and definitely one of the greatest things in fantasy that's ever been written. So this is also another book that was released and written after Tolkien's death. So it was gathered together by Christopher Tolkien, J.R.R. Tolkien's son, and edited together. And this is the lay of the tale of the children of Hurin. And a little bit of this is touched on in the Silmarillion, but not to this extent. There's also another one that was released called Beren and Luthien, which I have not read yet, but that is one of the most famous of the lays. And it's also featured not only in the Silmarillion, but also in a little bit in The Lord of the Rings, when I think Frodo is visiting Rivendell, and he first hears of Beren and Luthien. That's a great, wonderful love story, but also very sad. One of the main things that Tolkien, I think, did masterfully when he wrote these kinds of books was he made so much of what was going on before the happenings in Lord of the Rings very sad, and history isn't always wonderful, and I think he understood that, and that's why he created a lot of tension in the backstory, which actually makes the Lord of the Rings and reading of it pay off infinitely more if you haven't read it already. So this is a tale of Turin. And I can't remember his other, he goes by a few different names, but his name is Turin, and he is the only son of Hurin. He's the heir to that name, the heir to that house. And what happens is Hurin ends up going to fight Morgoth, and Morgoth is like the Satan character. In many ways, he was the ruler of Sauron. So until Morgoth's downfall, Sauron was just a captain in Morgoth's army, and when Morgoth fell, Sauron became the Dark Lord. Not to Morgoth's equal, because Morgoth was one of the Ainur, and he used to be called Melkor, and he was really the most powerful and had the most gifts and understanding of most everything. And he fell into shadow because he was jealous of Ilúvatar, and he wanted to create his own things outside the will and testament and dictates of his god. So you can, draw a lot of lines in comparison to Genesis in the Bible. And actually, in many ways, the later writings of Tolkien really took on that archaic language, that archaic, not really slang, because we talk in slang. That is the proper way back in the day where you were supposed to talk, like unto, and thee, and thou. It's just beautiful. There are so many infinitely beautiful words that we don't even use today. So this story is about the son of Hurin, and his name was Turin. And it goes from his growing up years until the very end of his life. And Turin has one of the saddest lives in all of the histories, in all of the stories that Tolkien wrote. In my opinion, I think it's one of the saddest stories Tolkien has ever wrote. It was very depressing. I mean, in many ways, it was incredible because there is so much history in it, and there are so many kind of solved things that you were wondering about even by reading the Silmarillion, because once again, this tale has a concise, consolidated version in the Silmarillion, but it skips over so many details, and you're left wondering. And so I'm really glad that Christopher Tolkien edited this together. So it goes from Turin is a prince of men, and this was before the Númenóreans, who later formed Gondor, which makes its appearance in Lord of the Rings, obviously, had even come to Middle-earth. So this is just an ancient line of men, and Hurin was a king of men. And he goes off to fight Morgoth, and he's captured by Morgoth, and he's tortured, and he's put under a curse, all of him and his family, because he resisted Morgoth so strongly, and Morgoth feared him so much, in many ways. Morgoth does fear the servants of Ilúvatar and the servants of good in the land, even if one-on-one he's not so scared. Melkor is pretty gigantic, and he's pretty vile. But he relies on servants and subversion and deception. And there's so many ties. I mean, to just evil. He's just evil. And so he puts a curse on Húrin and Húrin's whole line and dooms them. And Turin is the only son of Húrin. So ultimately the doom falls upon Turin. And throughout his life, he doesn't ever really find happiness. Turin is raised and he's sent away by his mother and told not to return. And he's sent to the Elven King of Nagathron. And not in Gondolin. This is before the fall of Gondolin, for any of you who are tracking with me. Hopefully somebody is right now. And so Turin is raised as a prince among elves, but because of the lifespan difference, Turin has become a man, and the elves still kind of look on him as a child, but he wants to go fight Morgoth, because they have thousands of years to wait until the opportune moment. But Turin is so haughty and so pissed off at Melkor, because of what Melkor has done to his family and to his father, that he really wants to attack Morgoth with everything that he possibly can throw Morgoth's way. And he doesn't want to wait in the forests and pick off elves with a bow. He wants to go out with a freaking sword and slay some effing Uruk-hai, even though I don't even think that the Uruk-hai are mentioned in this book. They're just mostly orcs. But, I digress again, getting really nerdy here. So Turin ends up not seeing his family. He ends up killing one of the elves, who actually attacks him first, and he runs away for fear that he might be exiled or that he might be held prisoner, and he doesn't want to be held prisoner by the elves. But the elves actually pardon him, and one of his friends is sent to look for Turin in order to communicate the king's not displeased with Turin, but Turin is hiding, and he's really hiding from his fate and from what he is supposed to be, and he kind of falls into this band of outlaws that are pretty much as good as orcs, and he has several adventures and actually does some incredible things, and ends up finally, he is attacked by the father of dragons, Glaurung. And Glaurung is one of the servants of Morgoth. And I really love this as well, because the only dragon you get who gets any face time is obviously Smaug in The Hobbit. And Smaug, obviously dragons can talk. And Smaug is a somewhat of a riddle master. So it's really interesting to hear from an even older and wiser dragon. And this dragon is very, very crafty and very, very wicked and evil. And he ends up virtually carrying out the doom of Turin through subversion and deceit. And it is super sad, and it makes me hurt a little bit inside. But anyway, I want to tell you how it ends. Either way, I guess that's probably enough. I freaking loved this book. I loved it. It was incredible. Tolkien's writing only got better with age. I don't care what anybody says. I really don't care. I don't think if you think that it's dull and boring or anything, if you can't find some semblance of something interesting within, you are mad. Anyway, okay, so enough. 5 freaking stars. 100% loved it. Great addition to this. I think that they just go hand in hand. It's just more histories of Tolkien's world, and I absolutely love hearing more, and I cannot wait to get into Beren and Luthien as well. And I'll probably do a full-length review of the Silmarillion as well, because there are certain parts that are better than others, and there are certain parts that are more interesting than others, and there are certain parts that you will just mind blown. And anyway, I was mind blown by the Children of Hurin. So thank you, Christopher Tolkien, for digging through your father's records, and thank you, JRR Tolkien, for writing the best fantasy in the universe ever that has ever been or probably will ever be. So one other thing, though, I will say that I also listened to the audiobook, which, this is kind of a double sadness, because Christopher Lee actually narrates the audiobook. Another fallen comrade. For those of you who don't know, Christopher Lee was a huge fan of Tolkien. In fact, he was one of the only genuine, huge, nerdy fans, I believe, that was acting in the movies, Lord of the Rings. He obviously portrays Saruman, the White Wizard, or the Many-Colored Wizard, who is really the villain wizard, who ends up being overthrown, and his staff is broken by Gandalf. And Gandalf is like, I love Gandalf so much. Anyway, Christopher Lee's voice is incredible. And one of the greatest things about Tolkien's work, especially this work, is that there is so much to do with the Elvish language, the language that Tolkien created specifically for his world. I think it's one of the most beautiful sounding languages I've ever heard, and it's not even real. I mean, it is real, but I wish there was a city where people only spoke Elvish, because I would go there, and I would live there. Actually, I may start one in a jungle or a forest somewhere. But Christopher Tolkien really communicates this book in such a way. It's wonderful, and he pronounces everything with such fluidity and such beauty, and I think he obviously and definitely, I know for a fact that he has great respect for the language. I believe he even went so far as to learn it, and I believe he even stated that he reads Tolkien's work at least once a year. I think it was an annual thing for him. I believe that I heard that in the appendices for Lord of the Rings, the movies. Anyway, yeah, so great audiobook, 5 stars. Can't believe we finally got to hear Christopher Lee record something of Tolkien's, and I'm so thankful that he did it before he unfortunately passed away as well. So again, much love. Thank you for joining me on Now Read This. I do these book reviews every Wednesday and Friday, and I do an audiobook read through. We're doing The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy on Monday, and I do 3 chapters every Monday. We are going to be taking a little bit of a break, I believe, probably starting Christmas week, and that is because I have some work to do on the channel, and I'm very excited to unleash a little bit more interesting things to look at, maybe some artwork and some more links and some ways that you can kind of stay in touch with me. So thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed the review. I hope I didn't nerd out too much, or maybe that I didn't nerd out enough. I couldn't nerd out enough. I could sit here and talk about Tolkien's work for hours and hours, but I don't have hours and hours tonight. I have to go to bed because I have to be up at 4. But much love. Farewell. Good night.